بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Now, the human being in Arabic is called insan. And insan comes from the word nisyan, which means forgetfulness. And so this is the reality of the human being. The human being is forgetful. And so when it comes to the prayers, there's no doubts that pretty much every single one of us will make mistakes in our prayer on accident. And Sujood Sahw is what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ taught us to fix these mistakes and keep the prayer valid. Okay? Now, Sujood Sahw is 2 sajdas that you pray at the end of the prayer. Now, in the Maliki madhāhib, if you subtract from the prayer accidentally, and notice how I'm saying on accident, because if you do anything that's not from the prayer on purpose, you guys know this invalidates your prayer. Everything to do with Sujood Sahw is on accident. So in the Maliki madhāhib, if you subtract something from the prayer accidentally, you pray something known as the qabli, which is 2 sajdas before the taslim. So you finish your tashahhud, you finish your dua, you finish everything, then you do 2 sujoods, and when you get up, you do tashahhud again. And tashahhud, remember, is tahiyyat. Tahiyyatullahi wa salatu tayyibat. Assalamu alayka ayyuha nabi wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi salihin. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. This is the tashahhud. And then you do taslim afterwards. This is the qabli. Okay? And this is when you subtract something from the prayer accidentally. The second situation is when you add something to the prayer accidentally. In which case you pray something known as the ba'di. And this is where you finish your prayer as normal, you do the taslim, then you go down into sajda by saying Allahu Akbar, then you go down and you do 2 sajdas, and then you do tashahhud again, and then you do taslim again. Does that make sense? This is known as the ba'di, where you do it after taslim, and this is when you add something accidentally to the prayer. But if you have a mix of additions and subtractions, you really mess up your prayer, and you do additions and subtractions, then you pray the qabli only, and you leave the ba'di. Okay? So to summarize, there's the qabli and the ba'di. The qabli is 2 sajdas before you end the prayer, and then you do taslim as normal. And the ba'di is when you finish the prayer by doing taslim, then you say Allahu Akbar, and you go down and do 2 sajdas, then tashahhud, then you do taslim again. Okay? These are the general rulings of Sujood Sahw. But not every addition or subtraction means that you guys pray Sujood Sahw. Pay attention. This is what this class is for. Because not every addition or subtraction is the same. Okay? So let's start with the subtractions of the prayer. Which means if you leave something from the prayer, you have to pray the qabli. And now you're going to understand why we split the classes into the fara'id of the prayer, the sunan of the prayer, the mandubat of the prayer, the makruhat of the prayer, the mubtilat of the prayer. Now you're going to understand why we separated these things earlier on in the program. Okay? Because Sujood Sahw, the qabli, with regards to subtractions, is only for the category of the sunnahs of the prayer. Meaning, if you guys leave a fard, for example, you leave a sajda, you don't pray Sujood Sahw for that. Now, you might be a bit shocked, but don't worry, we're going to clarify in this class. You don't pray the qabli if you leave a sajda. This will all make sense soon. Likewise, if you leave a mandub, if you leave one of the mandubat, for example, you don't say Rabbana wa lakal hamd after you do Sami Allahu liman hamida. Or for example, you do sujood but your feet aren't touching the floor. If you guys leave the mandubat, there's no Sujood Sahw for that. Even if you leave all the mandubat, you don't pray Sujood Sahw for that. And a lot of people make this mistake. They forget to do Rabbana wa lakal hamd. They think that's a subtraction. They pray Sujood Sahw. And this, as you guys know, invalidates their prayer. It's not for the mandubat. As for the makruhat, this is obvious, because if you leave the makruhat, you're rewarded. So obviously, there's no Sujood Sahw for leaving makruh, because your salah is valid and you get rewarded for leaving the makruhat. It's obvious. And likewise for the mubtilat, you have to leave the mubtilat for your salah to be valid. So of course, there's no Sujood Sahw for those. And so that leaves the sunnah category. If you leave something from the sunnah category, then you pray the qabli for that. But again, not every sunnah in the sunnah category you pray the qabli for. Because within the sunnah category, there's 2 separate categories. Sunnah mukhaffafa, which is a light sunnah, and sunnah mu'akkada, which is a strong sunnah. If you leave the sunnah mukhaffafa, then you don't pray qabli for that. the light sunnah, and I'm going to tell you what the strong sunnahs are, but the light sunnah, you don't pray qabli for that, even if you leave them all. But if you guys leave at least one sunnah mu'akkada, then you pray qabli for that. So that begs the question, which of the 12 sunan we mentioned in the class to do with the sunnahs of the prayer are the sunan al-mu'akkada? There's 8 of them. So make a note of them, inshallah, and memorize them, because this is very important. The first one is when you recite quietly in the loud prayers. So if it's Maghrib or Isha or Fajr, you have to raise your voice, as you guys know, in the first 2 units, right? If you guys leave reciting out loud and you recite quietly instead, whether that be the Fatiha or the surah after the Fatiha, then you pray the qabli. But then one might ask the question, what if you do it with 1 unit or 2 units? What's the limit? The limit is 3 verses. If you recite 3 verses quietly, at least, or more, then that necessitates that you have left a sunnah mu'akkada, and then you pray the qabli for that, which means 2 sajdas before the salam. Is that clear? Yep. Can I see a nod of head? Is that clear? Okay, inshallah. It's not even got to the hard bit yet. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. That's the first one. The second one is when you recite loudly in the quiet prayers. Now this one you have to pay attention, because this is going to throw a curveball in. Now what are the quiet prayers? The quiet prayers are Dhuhr and Asr. Every single unit you recite quietly, correct? But if you leave the sunnah mu'akkada of reciting quietly and then you recite loudly instead, this is actually an addition. So by leaving this sunnah mu'akkada, you've added something by reciting out loud when you should be quiet. And so for that, you pray the ba'di, not the qabli. Yeah? And this is the only one, by the way, which is, there's a curveball. The rest of the 6 that we're going to mention is all qabli, 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 qabli. This is the only one that's a ba'di. Because if you leave this sunnah mu'akkada of reciting loudly in the quiet prayers, then you've actually added to the prayer, because you've recited out loud instead of quiet. This is an addition, so you pray ba'di for that, okay? So that's the second one. The third one is reciting a surah after the Fatiha in the first 2 units. Now you guys know that in the first 2 units, you finish the Fatiha, and we mentioned earlier that it's a sunnah for you guys to recite at least 1 verse of Quran after the Fatiha, correct? This is the first 2 units. If you finish the Fatiha and then you go straight down into ruku', so you leave reciting a surah, then this is considered leaving a sunnah mu'akkada, so you pray qabli because of that. Yep. The fourth one is when you leave out 2 tasmi'. Sami' Allahu liman hamida. 1 is not enough. 1 is too light. It's too light of a sunnah. But if you miss 2 in a prayer, then that's enough for you to miss a sunnah mu'akkada, and then you go and you do a qabli after that. The 5th one is leaving out 2 takbirs. So if you forget to say Allahu Akbar and then you go down into ruku' straight away, 1 is not enough, it has to be 2. Because it's too light if it's just 1. So if you miss 2 takbirs in the salah, then you have to do the qabli at the end of your prayer. And by the way, one of you guys might be thinking, okay, what if you leave 1 tasmi' and 1 takbir? This also classes as well. So you can mix and match. If you miss 1 tasmi' and 1 takbir as well, then you have to do qabli as well. Based on these last 2 that we've mentioned. Okay? That's the 5th one. The 6th one is when you leave sitting down after 2 units and you stand up straight away. This is very, very common. So imagine you're praying Isha. Isha is 4 units. After 2 units, a lot of people, they stand up and they forget to sit down and do tashahhud, right? If you do that and you continue your prayer as normal, then you've left the julus. It's known as julus, sitting down. This is enough for you guys to do a qabli as well. And by the way, very important point here. If you guys leave the julus, anyone who's switched on and they remember the class of the sunnahs, they will remember that if you forget the julus and you stand up, you've not missed 1 sunnah, you've missed 3 sunnahs. You've missed the takbir from sitting down, you've missed the sitting itself, which is a sunnah, and you've missed the tashahhud, which is the speech, the tahiyyat, which is also a sunnah as well. So by missing the julus, you've missed 3. And you're going to see why this is important later on in the class, inshallah. And that's the 6th one. The 7th one is when you leave out the speech of the tashahhud. So let's say you sit down. Some people, they forget to do tahiyyat. Tahiyyatullah wa salatu. They forget to do that. This is enough for you to do qabli as well. This is a sunnah mu'akkada. And this seventh one is leaving out tashahhud for the first sitting. So if you're praying Asr, it's after 2 units. If you're praying Dhuhr, it's after 2 units. If you miss the tashahhud in the first sitting, this is a sunnah mu'akkada, you pray qabli. The 8th one of the sunnah mu'akkada is leaving out the speech of tashahhud in the second julus. Yeah? Which is the tahiyyat. If you miss that in the second one, again, you pray the qabli. So these are the 8 sunan mu'akkada, which if you leave one of them or more than one, then you have to do the qabli. And we said the qabli is when, before you do taslim to end the prayer, you do 2 sajdas before the taslim, and then you do tashahhud again, and then you do the taslim, and you end your prayer. Okay? So now you guys have the bulk of the rulings for naqs, which is the subtractions, leaving things out of the prayer. Now you know what classifies as something that leads you to have to do the qabli. But now I'm going to fill in the gaps of your knowledge so that you cover the all ground if you make these mistakes. These are potential situations you could face. What if you guys do a subtraction and you realize, I have to do a qabli? Let's say, for example, you recite quietly when you're supposed to recite out loud, and you think, oh, I have to do qabli at the end of the salah. But by the time you finish the salah, you forget to do taslim. What should you do in that situation? A lot of people, they forget to do sujood sahw. What should they do in that case? In that case, pay attention. If you're in the same place, like you're in the same room where you prayed, and not much time has passed, do takbir, do 2 sujoods, do your tashahhud, then do your taslim. Meaning you can do the ba'di essentially in that time. Then your salah is valid. So if you forget to do the qabli, and you're in the same place and not much time has passed, then you can say Allahu Akbar, do your 2 sajda of sahu, and then do your taslim, done. Salah is valid. But what if a long time has passed? Or you left the masjid, for example, you left the location where you prayed. You can no longer do sujood sahw. That's expired. However, your salah is still valid if you only missed 1 or 2 sunan only. Otherwise, if you missed 3 or more, then your salah is invalid. And now you guys should understand why I said that if you miss the middle jalsa, the middle sitting down, is 3 sunnahs. Now you understand why I mentioned that. Because if you miss the middle jalsa, you might think that's 1 sunnah. No, it's 3 sunnahs. And so if you leave the masjid and you forget to do the qabli, and a long time passes, then your salah is invalid, you'd have to repeat it as well. Is that clear? And so these are the rulings for forgetting the qabli. However, if you forget the ba'di, and I'm jumping the gun here because this is a very easy ruling, so I'm going to mention it here anyway. If you guys forget to do the ba'di, and when we cover the rulings you'll understand, even if you remember after 1 entire year, let's say you forgot to pray the ba'di, even if you remember after 1 entire year, oh, last year I should have prayed ba'di, then you get down and you pray it there and then. So it doesn't have an expiry date, and your salah remains valid even if you don't remember it. So don't worry about that, okay? So to summarize the qabli, you can only make it up if you forget, if not much time has passed and you're in the same location or around the same location where you guys prayed. But if a long time has passed or you left the location, your salah remains valid if you missed 1 or 2 sunnahs only. But if you missed 3 sunnahs, then you have to repeat your prayer, and that is the rulings for the qabli, forgetting the qabli. As for the ba'di, even if an entire year passes, then you get down and you pray it so long as you remember, because it has no expiration, and that is that, okay? So now you guys have all the rulings related to subtractions. Now we move to the additions, okay? But before I move to the additions, let me look at your faces. There should be more cameras, guys. Are you with me still, or are you in pain already? We're only just scratching the surface, by the way, but are you guys happy? Is it all clear so far? Yes? Good? All right, perfect. Let's go back to the class, inshallah. Now we're going to start with the additions. So, we said that when there's additions to the prayer, you don't pray the qabli, you pray the ba'di, which is after you do taslim, you say Allahu Akbar, you go down, you do 2 sajdas, then you do tashahhud, then you do taslim again. This is what the ba'di is, okay? But again, just like with subtractions, not every addition that you guys do means that you pray ba'di. So what are the additions? There's 3 categories. Pay attention, okay? The first one is if you do an extra fard. So for example, you recite the Fatiha 2 times. You're meant to do it once, but if you accidentally recite it 2 times, then this necessitates that you do a ba'di. So if you do an extra fard, And we're going to give examples for each one. The second category is if you do an extra action from the prayer itself that isn't a fard. Now pay attention, I said action here. An extra action, not speech. There's a difference between speech and a difference between action. So here the second category is an extra action itself from the prayer that isn't a fard. So for example, julus, sitting for tashahhud, is an action. But saying the tashahhud, tahiyyatullah wa salatu, this is a speech. So we're not talking about speech. Speech is not a valid addition. It's only the action that is from the prayer that isn't a fard. That's the second category. We're going to give examples, don't worry. The third category is an extra speech or action that is not from the prayer. So for example, you accidentally reach for some food, you eat it. You accidentally drink some water. You accidentally speak some words that are not from the prayer. Speech or action, if it's not from the prayer, this counts as an addition where you do a ba'di afterwards as well. You see? So these are the situations where if you do this addition, you pray the ba'di after. What doesn't count as an addition, just to reiterate, I already reiterated, but I'll reiterate again. Sunnahs, okay, that are a speech, like tashahhud, tahiyyatullah wa salatu tayyibat. This is not an addition that you pray ba'di for. As I mentioned, I'm just repeating what I said here. If it's a sunnah that's a speech, like for example saying Sami'a Allahu liman hamida, if you do that 2 times, that's not an addition where you do ba'di. Or if you do an extra takbir, you do 2 takbirs accidentally in one go. This is not an addition where you pray the ba'di. Sunnahs that are a speech, there's no ba'di for this. Likewise, there's no ba'di if you guys do extra mandubat. If you do loads of mandubat which are extra, for example, you say Subhana Rabbiyal A'la 10 times in sujood, 20 times, 30 times, these are all additions, right? You don't pray ba'di for that either. This is why you guys need to understand these lessons that we covered very, very well, and you're able to differentiate. This is mandub, this is sunnah, this is fard. Yeah? The ba'di is only for 3 categories. Number 1, if you pray an extra fard. Number 2, if you do an extra action, not speech, from the prayer itself, that isn't a fard, okay? And number 3, you do an extra speech or action that is not from the prayer. Now we're going to go through each category and give examples so you have full clarity, inshallah ta'ala. So let's start with adding an extra fard. Let's say you're praying and you accidentally do an extra unit, or even multiple extra units. Let's say it's Isha and you finished your second tashahhud and you accidentally stand up for the 5th unit. This is an extra fard because the unit has multiple fards in it. For example, the Fatiha is a fard. For example, sujood is a fard. So when you stand up to do a 5th unit, you're adding extra fards to the prayer. So when you do that, you finish your prayer and then you do taslim and then you do the ba'di because you added an extra fard or multiple fards. You see? But if you guys remember from the mubtilat, we said if you double the units, then even sujood sahw won't fix it. So for example, Isha is 4 units. If you pray 8 units, then even sujood sahw will not fix it. So if you do anything before 8 or anything before the double, then you pray the ba'di and that would fix your prayer. So that's the first example I'm going to give you. Another example is if you guys do 3 sajdas instead of 2. Also very, very common. An extra sajda is an extra fard. And we're talking about the category about extra fards. So then if you do that, then you do the ba'di afterwards, which is 2 units, 2 sajdas after taslim, as you guys know. The third example I'm going to give you, which is the last one, and everything will be clear, is if you do taslim accidentally after 2 units when you need to do 4 units. So let's say, for example, you're praying Isha. Isha is 4 units. But after you finish 2 units, you just forget, and then you do taslim after the first tashahhud. So that means you missed 2 units. And this happened in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Right? If you do that, and you remember, wait, I actually did 2 units, not 4. You stand up, you do Allahu Akbar, and then you pray the extra 2 units, and then you do taslim and you do the ba'di after. Why? Because you added an extra fard, which is taslim in the wrong place. You see? So these are the main examples for the category of adding a fard. Now let's move on to the next category, which is maybe a little bit complex, but you'll understand it inshallah. This is adding an action from the prayer that isn't a fard. So it's not a fard, but it's an action, not a speech. From the prayer, but it's an action, not a speech. The first example I'll give you is, let's say you get up get up for the 3rd unit after the 2nd unit without sitting down for tashahhud. This is also very common. Let's say, again, you're praying for you're praying dhuhr, which is 4 units. After you finish the second unit, what are you supposed to do? You're meant to sit down and do tashahhud, right? But if you stand up accidentally and your hands and knees leave the floor, pay attention, your hands and knees leave the floor, so you've kind of stood up already, yeah? If you decide to go back down, you added the act of standing up where you weren't meant to stand up, which is part of the prayer, and so then you need to pray the ba'di after you finish the prayer. So let me repeat. If you guys are supposed to do tashahhud after 2 units because you're praying asr and you forget, so you stand up for the 3rd unit, and so your hands leave the floor and your knees leave the floor. If you realize in that moment and then you sit back down straight away, you need to do ba'di. Why? Because you added the act of standing up, which is part of the prayer, but it's not a fard. Does that make sense? Yes? Is that clear? Okay, I can see people nodding their head. This is very, very good, alhamdulillah. If you find yourself in this situation, what's the correct thing to do? If your hands and knees leave the floor, don't go back down. You continue praying as normal, and then you pray the qabli at the end, like we mentioned earlier on in the class. That's the correct thing to do. Okay? But let's say you stand up, and then you start reciting the Fatiha. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. If you do 3 ayahs, and then you still decide to go back down, your salah goes invalid. Yeah? So there's 3 scenarios here. The first one is you sit back down when you're meant to stay up, you pray the ba'di. The second scenario is you stay up, which is the correct thing to do, then you pray the qabli, as we mentioned in the beginning of the class. The third scenario is if you start reciting the Fatiha, but you still go back down after 3 ayahs, then your salah is invalid, you have to repeat it. So this is one example that you guys need to remember, okay? The second and last example, which pretty much covers all of them, or the main ones at least anyway, for this category of additions, is, let's say again, you're praying Isha, which is 4 units, okay? And you reach the 3rd unit, thinking that you just finished your 4th. This is also very common. Let's say you're praying Dhuhr or Asr, and you pray 3 units, but you think you finished 4 units. It's very common, right? I'm sure it's happened to you guys before, where you think, oh yeah, I finished 4, but you're actually on 3, right? And so you start doing tashahhud. And then you remember, wait, I've just done 3 units, I've not done 4. What should you do in that case? Get up, pray your 4th unit, then you do the ba'di at the end. Why? Because you added a jalsa, sitting down, where you shouldn't have added it. Does that make sense? If you guys watch the recording multiple times, it will make a lot of sense. But like I said, if you're meant to pray 4 units and you finish 3 and think you did 4, so you start doing tahiyyat, you sit down as if you did 4, and then you remember whilst you're sat down, wait, I only did 3. You cut your tahiyyat, stand up, do the 4th unit, and then end the prayer and do the ba'di. Why? Because you sat. This is an action that is from the prayer, and you did it as an addition. So then you pray the ba'di. Is that clear? Yes. But then someone might ask the question, what if I sit down for a small amount of time, but I don't start the tahiyyat? Because sometimes people, they remember in a split second. They sit down and they remember in a split second, wait, I'm on my 3rd unit, I need to get up. But what if you've sat down and you've rested in your sitting position? This is where there's a difference of opinion. Do you need to do a ba'di if you stand up, or do you not need to do a ba'di? The correct opinion is you don't need to do a ba'di. So long as you sit for a small amount of time and you don't start the tashahhud, then you get up and you pray as normal. You don't need to do ba'di and your prayer is valid. Okay? So that's for the second category, the actions which are from the prayer that you add, which are not a fara'id. They're not fard. Okay? Now for the third category, which is actions or speech that are not from the prayer. This is extremely easy to understand. It'll give your brains a little break. So for example, if you guys eat accidentally during the prayer, or you reach for the bottle of water and you drink accidentally during the prayer, or you blow out of your mouth accidentally, as we mentioned in the last lesson, you guys remember that if you blow out of your mouth accidentally or on purpose, it invalidates your prayer. But if you do it accidentally, you pray the ba'di for it. It's all on accident, by the way, Sujood Sahw. Likewise, if you speak accidentally, let's say someone says, your mother calls you, and it sounds very urgent, so you respond to her. This is speech not from the prayer. You responded to her accidentally, right? So then you pray the ba'di after you finish the prayer, and so on and so forth. And that's it for the rulings to do with additions. So now you guys have the main rulings for subtractions from the prayer and additions to the prayer. you now have enough knowledge to understand the next segment, which is the hard, tricky segment. Now let me see your faces again. Now I can say that what we're going to is hard. But are you guys doing okay? Can you give me a thumbs up, middle, or down? How do you feel right now? Be honest. So we have someone in the middle, someone in... Okay, most people are in the middle. It's definitely going to be down after this next segment. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, it'll be fine when you watch it a few times, inshallah. But it's okay. It's okay. We'll get there, inshallah ta'ala. Okay. In the beginning, okay, I said something which might have shocked you, and I saw some eyebrows raise. I said to you guys, Sujood Sahw Qabli is not if you subtract fard actions. And some of you guys raised your eyebrows, correct? Because you were shocked. How is it that if you miss a sujood, you don't do the qabli? Because if you miss sujood, that's a subtraction, which is, it's a fard. Like, shouldn't you be praying qabli for it? Not quite. There are specific rulings with regards to this. And now that we've covered qabli and ba'di rulings, it's all going to make sense, inshallah. Okay? The reason why you do not pray the qabli if you miss a fard is because you need a fard for your prayer to be valid. Sujood Sahw alone is not going to fix the prayer. You need to do all the fara'id of the prayer to make it valid. And so you have to somehow do it in the prayer to make sure that your prayer is valid. And so the way that you fix your prayer if you miss a fard is based on two circumstances. It depends on the circumstance. There's two circumstances only. The first one is if you still haven't finished the unit where you make the mistake. So let's say, for example, you leave out a sajda. If you're still in the same unit where you left the sajda, there's a way to fix it. And we're going to talk about that way, right? The second circumstance is if you remember that you missed the sajda later on when the unit is finished. That has a specific way as well. So there's two circumstances here. If you miss a sajda and you're still in the same unit, there's a way to fix it in the moment. But if you miss a sajda and you remember at the end of your prayer, meaning the unit has finished, there's also a way to fix that too. Is that clear, guys? Can you give me a quick nod of the head because this is important? Yep? Okay, good. All right. So, let's start with the first circumstance. If you guys are still in the same unit, all right, let's say you are in the first unit, you say Allahu Akbar, and you miss the Fatiha. Or you miss a sajda. Okay? You have now corrupted the first unit. So what you're still in this first unit. So how do you fix it? First, you guys need to know when the next unit starts technically. Because if you know when the next unit starts, you know how to fix any fard that you leave in your prayer. The next unit starts and it becomes too late to fix it when you rise from the ruku' of the next unit. So let's say you start your prayer and you miss the sajda. You finish the Fatiha, you finish the surah, you go down into ruku' as normal, you rise, you go down into sujood. If you miss the sajda, okay, and you only do one sajda and you stand up for the second unit, it's still not too late. If you recite the Fatiha, still not too late. You recite the surah, still not too late. You go down into ruku', still not too late. When is it too late? When you rise from ruku', that's when it's too late. So if you catch the fact that you missed a fard in the units before it's too late, there's a way to fix it. So what is the way that you fix it? Let's say you missed the sajda in the first unit and you stand up and you start reciting the Fatiha, and after you finish the Fatiha, you're like, whoa, I missed the sajda in the last unit. Go straight down into sajda. Straight down into sajda. And you pray the sujood, one sajda, and you stand up and start the second unit all over again. And then at the end of the prayer, what do? You pray ba'di. Why do you pray ba'di? Because in the corrupted unit, you did things which are additions. Does that make sense? I'll give you another example. So actually, I'll repeat this example because the other example I want to give you is a bit complicated. Let's say you missed a sajda in the first unit, okay? And you stand up and you start reciting Fatiha, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And you're like, whoa, I just missed a sajda in the last unit. That first unit is now corrupted. So what do you do in that moment? You get down into sajda, you make that one sajda up, then you stand up, and then you start your second unit again, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, like that. Yep. And then at the end of the prayer, what do? You pray ba'di. because you've added an action that is not from the prayer. You did an extra Fatiha, for example, in the second unit, which then you did again. Yeah? So you always do ba'di if you're ever in this situation. Another example. Let's say you start your prayer, Allahu Akbar, and then suddenly you start saying, Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad. You're very, very busy, and you forget the Fatiha altogether. You go straight to Qul huwallahu ahad, because you're in a rush. You've missed the Fatiha. So let's say you go down to ruku', you rise, you do your sajdas, you get up again, and then you recite Fatiha again, alhamdulillah rabbil. You're like, whoa, I didn't do Fatiha in the first unit, and I'm in the second unit. Is it too late? No, because I told you that when you rise from the ruku' of the second unit, then it's too late. So now you can still fix it. So how do you fix it in that case? You make the intention whilst you're stood up that you're going to recite the Fatiha again to fix the first unit, and then you continue the first unit as normal, and then the third unit becomes your second unit. You see why it's hard? Is that clear? Or is it not clear? I'll repeat it one more time for you, inshallah. Let's say, yes, you pray the first unit. This is why you guys should pray with khushu', because you won't make any mistakes. Yeah? Okay, let's say you're in a rush and you say Allahu Akbar, Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad. Okay, you've missed Fatiha. There's a big problem. This is a fard, meaning your prayer is invalid so far. But you only remember in the next unit. So you go down, you stand up, and then you start reciting the Fatiha, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. If you're in a rush, it's like Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Rahman Rahim, Maliki. And you're like, whoa, I didn't pray Fatiha in the first unit. So how do you fix it? Stop. Make an intention that you're going to recite Fatiha again, and that unit becomes your first unit. So then you finish the unit as normal, then you go back up, and then the third unit becomes your second unit, and then you finish your prayer as normal, and then you pray the ba'di. Why? Because you have additions from the corrupted unit that you guys prayed. Is that clear now? Better? Alhamdulillah. Okay, perfect. Alhamdulillah. So that's the first circumstance. If you catch the missed fard in the units before it's too late. But what if it's too late? What do you do in that situation? Let's say you guys forgot a sajda in the first unit, and you only remember after rising from ruku' in the second unit, meaning it's too late now to fix it. You can't just drop what you're doing and go into sujood and fix it. What do you do in that case? In that case, the first unit becomes invalid, completely invalid. And your second unit becomes your first unit. And the third unit becomes your second unit. And then you do tashahhud. Even though you've done 3 units, you do tashahhud after the third unit, because the third unit is your second unit. And then you finish your prayer as normal and you do ba'di at the end. Why? Because the first unit is addition, and it's also a corrupted unit, and it doesn't count. You see? Is that clear, guys? Clear? Okay. There's some smiles, alhamdulillah. So far, so good. Inshallah. But what if you guys forget to make up the fard? Now this is a third circumstance. What if you miss a sajda and you finish the prayer, and only after the prayer you're like, whoa, I missed a fard. What do I do in that situation, right? Because I've given you 2 scenarios now to fix your prayer if you miss a fard. Because a fard is needed to make sure your prayer is valid. So what if you finish the prayer and you completely forget until after you finish the prayer? You do taslim, salam alaikum rahmatullah, salam alaikum rahmatullah. Oh wait, I didn't do the Fatiha in the second unit. What do you do in that case? If a long time passes, or you leave your location, for example, you leave the masjid, your prayer is invalid. Because the fard is needed to make sure that your prayer is valid. This is something that you guys already know. But if you're still in the same location, and not much time has passed, you stand up, you say Allahu Akbar, Takbiratul Ihram, and you repeat the corrupted unit. You do an entire unit. And then you do the ba'di at the end of the salah. Because there's an addition. The addition is that you corrupted a unit in the prayer. And after taslim you remembered. So what do? You stand up, you say Allahu Akbar, you do an entire unit to replace the corrupted unit, and then you end the prayer and then you do the ba'di. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay, good. And the same applies again if you guys pray 2 units for dhuhr instead of 4, and you only remember after taslim. We already mentioned this. What do? Dhuhr is 4 units. If you pray 2 and you do taslim, you stand up, you do takbiratul ihram, Allahu Akbar, you pray 2 extra units, and then at the end, you do the ba'di. Because you did an additional taslim where it's not meant to be there. We already mentioned this example, right? And so that summarizes Now the hard bit, inshallah the rest is going to be easy. That summarizes the hard bit of Sujood Sahw, and you now know pretty much everything to do with Qabli and Ba'di, additions and subtractions, but there's still a little bit more so that you guys can patch up like all your knowledge and you guys have a solid understanding of what's going on, okay? Do you guys want a break? Mental break? Yes or no? Are you still like this or are you like this? Oh, it's still in the middle. That's good. Allahumma barik. Allahumma barik. Good. Is anyone still like this? Anyone an up? Big thumb? No? I thought so. I'm surprised it's not down. That's good. I'm happy with that. Alhamdulillah. Do you guys want a break? Yes or no? Shake your head. Nod your head. Do you want a break? You do want a break. That's one. No. No. Okay. The no's have outweighed the yeses. I'm so sorry, sister. I'm so sorry. So let's continue, inshallah. All right. Glad tidings, okay? Glad tidings. You finished the super vast majority of rulings. What I'm giving you now is extras. It's like cherry on top, so you guys know it inside out. The next category is to do with doubts. Now, if you pay attention, everything we've covered so far is when you know that you added something. You know when you subtracted something. But what if you have doubts if you did something? Did I complete this action? Did I pray 3 units? Did I pray 4 units? Did I do an addition? Did I do a subtraction? What do you do in that case? This is known as shak in the Arabic language. Shak in Arabic means you're on the fence. 50% chance it's like this, 50% chance it's like that. You don't know whether you did it or not. This is known as shak. If you guys have shak that you completed something or not, then you consider that you didn't complete that thing and then you do it. And at the end of the prayer, you do the Ba'di. So for example, if you guys have shak, did I do 2 units or did I do 3 units? You genuinely don't know. Did I do 2 or did I do 3? Then you choose the lower number. You did 2 and then you pray the 3rd. And then the 4th as well if it's like Isha or Dhuhr or Asr. Yeah? And at the end of the prayer, what do? You do the Ba'di. Because you potentially added something to the prayer because you chose the lower value. Is that clear? So if you guys, for example, have shak, did I do 1 sajda or did I do 2 sajdas? You go with the lower because it's shak, you're on the fence. And then you do a 2nd sajda, but just in case you might have done 3, you do the Ba'di at the end. Because it could be a potential addition. Does that make sense? So once you do something that you had shak in, you do the Ba'di at the end in case of any extra additions. But what if you're more than 50% sure? Sometimes we think, you know what? I'm so certain that I did 3 units, but there's a small doubt in my mind that I did 2. This is something in Arabic known as dhann. This is not shak, this is dhann. When you're almost certain or you're more than 50% sure that you did something, what do you do in that case? In that case, you stick with what you're certain with, you're mostly certain with, and you don't need to do any sujood sahw at the end. So for example, you're like, oh, I'm almost certain I did 3 units, but there's a small chance that I did 2. What do you do in that case? You stick with 3 and you don't do qabli or ba'di. Yep. Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. That's good. Okay. Guys, is that clear? Give me a quick nod of the head. Yes or no? Okay. There's only one anomaly when it comes to shak and doubts and whatnot, inshallah. And this will make it clear, inshallah, okay? What if you doubt that you've not done taslim? If you doubt you've done a sajda, we've covered that. If you doubt that you've done the Fatiha, we've covered that. We've covered everything to do with shak, everything to do with doubt. But there's one anomaly. If you doubt, you have shak if you did taslim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Like you finished your prayer and you don't know if you did taslim to end your prayer. What do you do in that case? In that case, you do the taslim anyway. And there's no sujood sahw on you. But you might ask the question, why? Everything else needs sujood sahw if I, for example, doubt if I did a fard or not. So why is this one different? Because taslim is fard, to end the prayer. The reason why is because if you did do taslim, and then you do another taslim, then your prayer is already ended. So let's say you have shak if you did taslim or not. If you do taslim again, then you've already done one. There's a potential you've already done one. If you've already done one, then that means your prayer is already finished, meaning the second taslim is invalid anyway. But if you haven't done one, and not a lot of time has passed, and you're still in the same location, and then you do taslim, then you've ended your prayer. And you don't need to do anything extra. You don't need to do any qabli or ba'di because you've technically ended your prayer now if you didn't end up doing it. So that hopefully makes it clear why the taslim is an anomaly. But what if you guys have wiswas? What if you guys have wiswas? Wiswas is a test of the tests of life. Wiswas is when you have so much doubt, so much whispers in your mind that you doubt every single prayer that you pray. Some people are tested with this, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for them. The scholars have mentioned the rulings to do with people that have wiswas as well. If you guys have wiswas, what you do is you leave what you have doubt in. So if you have wiswas, did I pray 2, did I pray 3? Stick with 3. Did I do 1 sajda, did I do 2 sajdas? You stick with 2. You leave your doubt completely. And at the end of the prayer, it is only mandoob to do the ba'di. You don't even need to do the ba'di. So you just leave whatever shak you have because of your wiswas, if you have this severe test, and that is, an ease that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you through His deen. Yep. So now you guys are reaching a level of true mastery when it comes to the rulings of Sujood Sahw. Now, a couple more things that we need to speak about, inshallah. And that is the rulings of Sujood Sahw when you're praying behind the Imam. Do you guys want a break or do you guys not want a break? I want to finish this in one sitting, inshallah, and then you guys can go home. Do you know what? Stand up. Stand up. Stand up, yallah. Stand up. Good. Good. Yallah, stretch your arms out. Everyone, go on, stand up. I can see you guys. Not all of you are standing up. That's right. You gotta stand up. No, some people. Okay, now stretch your arms out like this. Do a 360. Just like get yourself moving, empty your mind a little bit because we wanna reset our minds a little bit. Good, alhamdulillah, good. Don't say I didn't tell you guys, by the way, for those who stayed sat down. Because now if we go into the next rulings, your head's gonna... Anyway, khair inshallah. That's good. Okay. Now, you guys literally know everything to do with qabli and ba'di. But there's certain rulings that you need to know when you're praying behind an imam, okay? Because praying behind the imam, it changes slightly. And this is the right time to mention it, inshallah, so that you guys have everything under your knowledge, bi'idhnillah. If you guys remember from the mubtilat of the prayer, we did this 2 lessons ago. The mubtilat, we said that if you guys join the prayer late and you don't catch a single unit of prayer, you join the imam when he's in tashahhud, you don't even catch a single unit, you do not pray any sujood sahw with the imam, qabli or ba'di, otherwise your salah is invalid. We already covered this. If you join the last unit and you don't even catch the last unit, meaning you have to make up every single unit. If the imam prays the qabli or the ba'di and you join him, your salah is invalid. So you don't join the imam if you miss every single unit. We covered this. However, if you catch at least 1 unit, then you join the imam for the qabli, but you don't join the imam for the ba'di. Rather, you pray with the ba'di by yourself when you make up all the rest of the units. We also covered this. You guys should already know this from the mubtilat lesson. That if the imam, you catch 1 unit with him and he prays the qabli, you join him with the qabli. If you catch at least 1 unit. But if he prays the ba'di, you make up your units first and then you pray the ba'di by yourself. Otherwise your salah is invalid. You guys should already know this, okay? But what if you make a mistake in the prayer behind the imam? A lot of people ask this question. If the imam is praying and you accidentally stand up for the 3rd unit instead of sitting down, and then you go sit down straight away. This is a very, very common mistake. Do you have to do the sujood sahw, or do you follow the imam? What are you supposed to do? Here's the principle. So long as you guys do all the fara'id of the prayer, and you guys know the fara'id because we had the class about it. If you do all the fara'id, apart from the Fatiha, because if you guys remember, we said in that prayer, in that lesson, that the Fatiha is the only fard that the imam carries for you. So you can stay silent when the imam is reciting the Fatiha during the entire prayer. And it's mandoob to recite the Fatiha when the imam is quiet, in the quiet units. You guys know this. So long as you do all the other fara'id, any other mistake that you make, the imam carries it for you. And you don't need to do any sujood sahw. If you talk accidentally, you blow accidentally, you stand up when it's time to sit down for tashahhud, Any mistake you make after that, you do not need to do any tashahhud whatsoever. And even sujood tilawa, by the way. You know, I pray in the haram, alhamdulillah. Allah has blessed me to be in Medina right now. A lot of the time, the imams, they recite Quran where there's a sujood tilawa, where they reach a part of the Quran where they have to do sujood. It's not a have, it's not a must, it's a sunnah. But when you look around, sometimes, you know, I've arrived to the prayer late and I see an imam pray the sujood tilawa. People don't know that the imam has reached sujood tilawa because it's such a big masjid, you can't see the imam. So people, they just go into ruku' thinking it's ruku'. And then the imam stands up and then he continues reciting. This is a mistake from the people praying behind the imam. But because it's a sunnah only, the imam or the people following the imam don't need to do sujood sahw because the imam carries the mistake for them. So the principle is that you do the fara'id and every other mistake the imam carries. Does that make sense? Okay? There is one exception though. Let's say you join the prayer late and the imam does taslim. And when you're making up the prayer, you make a mistake. So let's say the imam says, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. Then you stand up to make up the 2 missed units because you came to the masjid late. If you make a mistake when you're making up the prayer, this has nothing to do with the imam anymore. It's got something to do with you. So all the rulings that we spoke about, addition, subtraction, qabli, ba'di, apply to you now. So you have to do qabli, you have to do ba'di. And this happened to me recently. I came to the masjid, I missed 3 units. So I caught a unit. When I stood up to make up the 3 units, I think I missed a tashahhud. So I did the qabli and I ended the salah. Because I missed it myself. It wasn't the imam's fault. You see? So that's something very important for you guys to know. But what if the imam makes a mistake? What if the imam himself makes a mistake? Let's say the imam, he's not very well learned about the fiqh of prayer. And maybe after this class you guys realize that actually not many people know about these rulings. That it's a lot deeper than you originally thought. Let's say you're praying behind an imam. You guys are masters of sujood sahw now, but the imam doesn't know. And so he makes a mistake and he doesn't even do sujood qabli or ba'di. What should you do? In that case, you do it yourself and then end the prayer. If the imam doesn't do it, that's with him. If it's something that necessitates his prayers invalid, you keep yours valid by you doing the qabli or the ba'di yourself because of the knowledge you've gained. But what if the imam leaves a fard? What if the imam leaves a fard specifically? Let's say the imam gets up after 1 sajda and he misses the 2nd sajda. If you guys say subhanallah and he doesn't understand, then you say you missed a sajda because you're allowed to speak. If you remember, we mentioned this. To fix the prayer itself, you're allowed to speak. So you say you missed a sajda, but he still doesn't understand. You have a choice. You can either pray it yourself, the 2nd sajda, then join the imam, and you don't have to do anything at the end. Or you wait till the end of the prayer, you follow the imam, you wait till the end of the prayer, and when he does taslim, you stand up and you do a brand new unit to make up for the mistake, and then you end your prayer as normal. Is that clear? Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Okay, one more thing. I promise you one more thing. Very, very small. And it's like the cherry on top. Is the sujood sahw only for the obligatory prayers? Or is it also for the nafl prayers? The sujood sahw, qabli and ba'di, applies to the fard and the nafl prayers, the non-obligatory prayers. But there's a principle which will make you understand this inside out. What is a fard in the obligatory prayer is a sunnah in the nafl prayer. What is a sunnah in the obligatory prayer is a mandoob in the nafl prayer. So now you know that if you miss something that is a fard in the nafl, you've missed a sunnah. So you don't need to make it up like we've spoken about, rather you pray the qabli. So all the rulings that we've spoken about in this last hour apply based on this principle. What is a fard in the obligatory is a nafl in, or is a sunnah in the nafl. So if you, for example, miss the Fatiha is a fard in the obligation. In the obligation, we learnt that you have to make that up somehow. Otherwise, your prayer is invalid. But in a nafl prayer, if you miss the Fatiha, this is a sunnah that you've missed. So you don't need to make it up, but you have to pray the qabli. Inshallah, when you guys repeat this lesson and you revise it, you'll understand what I'm saying, inshallah. But I'll leave it at that because I don't want to just drive you a bit more crazy. I think we've done a lot of rulings today, but I promise you that if you guys repeat this class multiple times, you will understand exactly what's going on. You'll be masters of Sujood Sahw, and inshallah, you won't make any wrong mistakes that invalidate your prayers in the future, inshallah ta'ala. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.